If you hold Iraqi dinar notes, listen closely. Today, January 13, 2026, there are reports that a 5-day exchange window has become active and that banks and the central bank are moving into operational mode. This is not a rumor you want to skim past. In the next several minutes, I will walk you through what those reports say, what the activation of a short exchange window could mean, in practical terms, how banks in the central bank appear to be coordinating, and most importantly, what careful steps holders should take right now to protect themselves and their assets. I will explain verification steps, how contract or official rates are likely to be handled during a concentrated exchange period, what kinds of documents and note conditions banks usually require, and how to avoid the common scams that always surface during sudden currency events. I will also cover realistic expectations about timing and value changes, because headlines inform chatter often promise overnight wealth that does not reflect how official exchange operations are managed. Stay with me through the full update. I will end with a concise checklist you can use immediately to prepare, plus a calm roadmap of next steps if you decide to go to a bank or contact an official channel. First, the basic framing. When people talk about a 5-day exchange window, they mean a limited, officially sanctioned period during which authorized banks open special counters or dedicated processing windows to accept and verify physical notes and to process formal exchanges or redemptions. These windows are often used by central banks to manage a surge in public demand for note verification and to handle large numbers of exchanges with consistent procedures. A concentrated 5-day window can be about logistical control and security. It lets the central bank and the banking system allocate staff, station verification experts, and ensure that anti-fraud checks, serial number records, and documentation requirements are handled in a controlled environment. For holders, this kind of window is simultaneously an opportunity and a logistical challenge. It creates a clear start and end date for at least part of the exchange process. But it also means banks will have limited capacity each day and may require appointments, documented ID, and proof of ownership. If the reports about a 5-day window are accurate, expect lines, strict verification checks, and clear-cut rules about which denominations and serial ranges are eligible during that specific period. Next, the role of the central bank and why its communications matter. The Central Bank of Iraq (CBI) sets official policy for currency management, and when it confirms operational steps, even indirectly through budget documents or circulars to commercial banks, that gives banks a green light to open exchange counters and process redemptions. In this cycle, the bank has publicly set the official exchange rate for the 2026 federal budget and issued technical guidance in recent months about automating foreign currency windows and processing damaged or defective banknotes, which are the kinds of preparations that precede a concentrated exchange operation. That kind of preparatory work is the reason many bankers and currency operations teams can go live quickly when a window opens. For holders, that means the infrastructure to verify serial numbers, check note condition, and post transactions to bank systems is more likely to be present. It also means banks will be on record with instructions about hours, documentation, and whether they will accept notes from non-account holders or foreigners. If you plan to approach a bank during the active window, treat the central bank's circulars and bank-specific announcements as the authoritative procedure to follow. What does the official rate setting in the budget mean for holders right now? The central bank's confirmation of an official rate for 2026, reported as 1,300 dinars per US dollar in recent government documents and news reports, is primarily a fiscal policy tool for budget calculations and does not automatically translate into an immediate revaluation or guaranteed windfall for currency holders. Budget rate setting helps the government plan oil revenues, spending, and international contracts. It is not the same as announcing a one-time conversion or revaluation of old notes at a new favorable rate for all holders. Officials use the budget rate to stabilize expectations for government accounting. For private holders, the practical effect depends entirely on how any exchange window is structured, whether it is limited to replacing damaged notes, limited to certain serial ranges, or open to broad conversions at a contract rate. If a 5-day exchange window is active, the budget rate gives context to how banks may record transactions for accounting. But holders should not assume that a budgeted official rate automatically equals immediate high valuation for every note walked into a bank. Keep expectations grounded in what banks actually post as their conversion instructions during the window. If a 5-day window is now active, what should holders do first? The immediate priorities are verification of sources, securing your notes, and preparing documentation. Start by checking official announcements from your bank and the central bank's published channels. Look for precise dates, hours, and the list of documents required. Next, organize your notes carefully. Sort by denomination. Make an inventory with serial ranges and photograph or scan notes for your records. Keep original documents handy, valid government-issued ID, proof of address, and any bank account details you might need. If you are not a bank customer, find out whether the bank will accept walk-ins or only account holders. Many banks prioritize customers during high-demand windows. Importantly, do not respond to unsolicited offers from third parties promising to expedite exchanges. Those are classic scam signals. Finally, consider contacting the bank ahead of time to ask about appointment systems or priority service for large volumes. Moving early to confirm procedural details will save time and reduce the risk of avoidable errors when you arrive. How banks typically verify notes during a concentrated exchange period. When banks open special exchange counters, they apply a layered verification protocol, physical inspection for counterfeits and damage, cross-checks of serial numbers against internal lists or flagged series, confirmation that notes are legal tender in circulation, and documentation of deposits or conversions in the bank's ledger. Staff at these windows are usually trained to detect reissued or replaced series and to refuse notes that fail authenticity checks. If notes are old, torn, heavily worn, or mutilated, banks may follow a different process, such as sending them to a central office that specializes in damaged currency processing. During short exchange windows, the throughput and consistency of verification are essential because banks must avoid errors that could lead to fraud or settlement issues with the central bank. Expect that bank staff will be strict about note condition and serial number legibility, and that they will ask you to sign declarations confirming ownership and the origin of the notes where required. Timing and logistics you should expect when a 5-day window is active. A concentrated exchange window is likely to produce long queues and capacity limits, so plan for a process that may take multiple visits or require appointments. Banks might stagger services by region, denomination, or account status to manage inflows. They could also set daily caps on the number or total value of notes accepted to preserve liquidity and avoid settlement stress at the central bank level. If you hold a large quantity of notes, consider breaking them into organized batches and bringing an independent witness for documentation. Bring multiple forms of ID and copies, and make sure your phone number and email address are current to receive follow-up confirmation from the bank. Expect that even after notes are verified, settlement into your local currency or an account may not be instantaneous. Banks need to clear internal checks and update ledgers, and there may be a short processing period before funds are available. Understanding contract or official rates during an exchange window. When banks process official redemptions, they generally use an agreed contract or official rate as directed by the central bank or finance ministry. Contract rates are intended to create consistency across banks in international transfers, and they reduce ambiguity in high-volume operations. That said, the rate applied during a temporary window can depend on the precise instructions issued by the central bank for that event. There are two practical outcomes. The bank may apply the official rate used for government accounting during the fiscal year, or it might apply a separate conversion table defined specifically for the window. Holders should expect the bank to provide a clear rate schedule and a written confirmation of the applied rate for every transaction. Do not accept verbal assurances. If you receive a conversion at a rate you do not understand, request a written breakdown showing how the bank computed the final amount. That paperwork will be essential if you need to dispute the computation later. Security and fraud prevention measures to bear in mind. Whenever currency events accelerate, illicit actors increase activity. The typical scams include fake redemption centers, offers to buy your notes at above-market private rates, or requests for advance fees to process exchanges on your behalf. Protect yourself by insisting on official bank receipts, confirming bank account details before any transfer, and never paying a fee to an intermediary for an official exchange if the bank's published procedure does not require one. If someone calls or messages claiming to represent a government program, verify the claim independently with the bank's official phone numbers or central bank channels. If possible, conduct exchanges only at recognized bank branches or central bank counters. Keep a careful record of all communications and obtain written confirmations for any agreements. If something feels rushed or pressured, step back. High-pressure tactics are common in scams that try to force rushed decisions during short windows. What to expect during note authenticity checks and damaged note procedures. Banks trained to process large flows of notes will inspect each bill for watermark integrity, security threads, microprinting, correct paper composition, and consistent serial number patterns. Heavily damaged or soiled notes may be set aside and processed under a different scheme that can include a special submission to a central processing unit that determines whether to accept, partially credit, or reject the note. That is why careful storage before exchange matters. Keep notes flat, dry, and free of tape or foreign substances that complicate authentication. For damaged notes, obtain a detailed receipt showing the note status and the bank's next steps. If notes are rejected, ask for a written explanation and a reference number for follow-up. In many systems, a rejected claim can later be resubmitted under separate damaged note procedures, but you will need official documentation to start that process. How international banks and correspondent relationships factor in when redemptions involve foreign currency. If the 5-day exchange window includes conversions to foreign currency or transfers to overseas accounts, expect correspondent banks and foreign exchange processes to come into play. Local banks often rely on correspondent relationships to settle large foreign currency obligations. That means there may be a two-step process. First, local verification and crediting into a local currency account, then settlement through correspondent banks for cross-border conversion or transfer. Delays can arise at either step. If you intend to receive foreign currency directly, request a clear timeline and ask which correspondent bank will be involved. Keep in mind that anti-money laundering checks and international compliance reviews can add days to settlement, especially for large-value transactions. Patience and document accuracy reduce friction. Practical documents and evidence to bring to a bank during the active window. Bring multiple forms of official identification and copies, national ID card, passport, and any secondary ID that banks accept. If you have an existing account with the bank, bring your account number and recent statements. For non-account holders, banks may ask for additional proof of residency or origin of funds to satisfy KYC rules. Prepare a written inventory of the notes you are presenting. Include denomination, count, and serial ranges. Photocopy everything and keep originals in a secure place until the bank issues a receipt. If you have purchase receipts or other provenance documentation for how you obtained the notes, bring those as well. That helps if the bank requests proof of legitimate acquisition during verification. Always request a stamped receipt listing serial numbers and the bank official's name when you submit notes. That receipt becomes your primary record in any dispute. Emotional and expectation management for holders during concentrated exchange operations. It is easy to get swept up in optimistic forecasts on social media or calming declarations from friends. Remember that official windows are about orderly processing, not immediate personal windfalls. Some holders will complete exchanges quickly and receive straightforward conversions. Others will find notes ineligible or will discover that damaged notes are routed to slower procedures. Careful planning and realistic expectations will prevent poor decisions made under pressure. If you are emotionally attached to the idea of overnight gains, pause before making financial commitments. Use the active window to document and verify, not to make impulsive deals with third parties promising preferential terms. This manages your financial risk and reduces the chance of being targeted by scams that exploit hope and urgency. How to handle communications and follow up with the bank after you submit notes. After banks accept notes for verification, insist on a formal receipt that includes a reference number and an approximate timeline for processing. If processing will take more than a day, ask for the contact details of the unit handling the verification and note the name of the staff member. Keep copies of any forms and emails. If the bank does not provide an electronic update, follow up politely but persistently by phone or email using the reference number. If problems arise, escalate to the bank's customer service or compliance team. If you suspect procedural irregularities or fraudulent behavior, document everything and consider notifying central bank complaint channels. Maintaining a clear, documented paper trail is the best protection in any large-scale, time-limited exchange operation. A word on damaged or mutilated notes and how central banks typically approach them. Central banks often have defined schemes for replacing or redeeming damaged currency, which can include partial credit depending on the portion of the note that remains intact and verifiable. Those schemes are formal, require submission to specialized units, and may not be handled at the frontline exchange counters during a short window. If your notes are mutilated, the front counter should provide you with instructions and a receipt that transfers the issue to the damaged notes unit. That unit usually performs a more detailed analysis and reports back with the decision. Processing times can be longer because authenticity and traceability checks are more complex. Do not assume damaged notes will be accepted on the spot. Instead, treat the immediate exchange window as the start of a longer verification path for damaged issues. What the market indicators tell us about current dinar pricing and context for the exchange window. Market reports in recent days show that parallel market rates remain substantially different from the official budget rate used for government accounting. That gap is a common feature of currencies in transition and reflects liquidity, market confidence, and local supply and demand dynamics. If you see a 5-day window active, know that the rate you receive in a bank transaction may be the official contract rate and not the parallel market price you see in informal channels. Also expect banks to emphasize stability and consistency rather than speculative valuation. If you are comparing offers, prioritize documented bank offers tied to official procedures over informal rates advertised online. Market numbers can be useful for context, but the bank's written exchange instructions are what will determine the outcome for your notes. Coordination between the central bank, the Ministry of Finance, and commercial banks during an active window. For a short, intensive operation like a 5-day window to succeed, central bank guidance and ministry coordination must be tight. The central bank provides technical instructions in liquidity management. The ministry aligns budgetary accounting and fiscal flows, and commercial banks execute on the ground with trained staff and secure counters. That coordination helps prevent settlement mismatches and reduces operational risk. If you encounter conflicting instructions at a local branch, ask for clarification in writing and check for any published circular from the central bank or finance ministry. Official circulars will resolve disputes. Verbal assurances will not. Remember that these systems are designed to protect the broader financial system as much as to process individual transactions, so expect rigorous controls. How to avoid being a victim of scams during a short exchange window. Scammers use urgency to their advantage. Typical scams include solicitations that promise to handle your exchange for a fee, present buyers who offer above market rates for a cut, or fake confirmation emails and phone numbers. Never hand over notes without an official, stamped bank receipt. Do not accept cash offers from unknown individuals, and never pay an upfront fee to a third party for access to an insider exchange. If someone insists the official process will take too long and offers an alternative, that is a red flag. Use official channels only, verify phone numbers on bank websites, and if you are approached in person, take time to confirm identity before proceeding. If something seems off, leave and verify independently. Your documentation and patience are the best protections in a rushed environment. What large holders should consider when a 5-day window is active. If you hold a significant volume of notes, engage proactively with the bank relationship manager before the window opens or as early as possible on the first day. Large volumes can trigger additional compliance reviews and liquidity management steps for the bank. so banks may require advance notice to handle the valuation and settlement. Consider requesting a written plan from your bank for how they will manage the volume, including timeline, verification checkpoints, and settlement instructions. Ask whether there are daily caps on the amount that can be processed and whether large conversions will be netted or settled over multiple business days. If you plan to convert into foreign currency or transfer funds overseas, get clarity on the correspondent banking steps and estimated settlement windows. Advanced planning avoids surprises and reduces the risk of partial processing. Local versus non-resident holders, procedural differences to expect. Some banks limit active exchange services to account holders or residents during concentrated windows to manage compliance and KYC burdens. Non-resident holders should check whether banks permit walk-in conversions, require appointment scheduling, or need additional documentation like proof of overseas residency. If you are a non-resident planning to travel to submit notes, verify travel and immigration constraints and confirm that the bank will accept external passport-based verification. Also consider whether you can appoint a trusted proxy with a notarized letter and the necessary ID. Though many banks restrict proxy submissions for high-value transactions, don't assume universal acceptance. Confirm the bank's policy in writing before making travel plans to avoid unnecessary trips. How governments and markets typically respond in the days after a concentrated exchange window. After a short window ends, several things can happen. Banks publish official tallies of processed volumes. Central banks may issue follow-up guidance based on operational lessons. And secondary market activity can react to the clarified supply and official disclosures. If the window is part of a phased rollout, there may be scheduled subsequent windows or permanent arrangements implemented. Alternatively, if the operation uncovers significant eligibility or technical issues, authorities may extend procedures or set up additional verification channels. For holders, this means the period immediately after the window can be as important as the window itself. Keep your receipts and stay alert for official updates that outline any additional steps, deadlines for documentation, or reconciliation procedures. A realistic view on value changes and why headlines can mislead. Social media and some pundits often conflate an operational exchange window with an immediate permanent revaluation that will transform holdings into large sums overnight. In reality, value changes depend on macroeconomic policy, central bank decisions, and how conversion rates are set in writing for the exchange event. The existence of an exchange window establishes process and legitimacy, but it does not in itself set a new market valuation. Treat any claims of guaranteed multifold gains with skepticism. Ask for documented confirmation of the applied rate and a written explanation of how it was derived. Being guided by official documentation rather than social chatter will prevent costly misunderstandings and protect you from bad decisions made under excitement. How to document and preserve proof of any bank transaction or submission you make. Always request and keep a stamped, signed receipt that lists the bank branch, officer name, date and time, denominations and serial ranges of notes submitted, the declared condition of the notes, and the expected processing timeline. If funds are to be deposited into an account, ask for the expected clearing date and any reference number to track it. Store digital photos of the receipt and the notes you submitted. Timestamp them if possible. If the bank provides an electronic confirmation, save the email and print a hard copy. Having a robust paper trail accelerates dispute resolution and helps if you are required to produce records for compliance or tax reporting. Clear documentation is your strongest asset in any disputed or delayed transaction. Closing practical checklist you can act on now. First, verify official notices on your bank's website and the central bank's published channels. Second, organize and inventory your notes carefully and take clear photographs. Third, bring at least 2 valid IDs and proof of address to the bank. Fourth, request written confirmation for any acceptance, conversion rate, and expected settlement timeline. Fifth, avoid third-party offers and never pay an upfront fee to a private intermediary. Sixth, if you have damaged notes, accept that they may follow a separate, longer procedure and obtain a receipt for that process. 7th, if you hold large quantities, contact your bank in advance for a processing plan. 8th, keep calm. Don't make rushed financial commitments and document every step. This checklist will help you move methodically and reduce the common pitfalls people face in concentrated exchange operations. Final thoughts and a calm perspective to end with. Sudden activation of an exchange window is a notable operational event and can be historic for holders, but it is a process first and a realization of value second. Treat it as an opportunity to verify, organize, and document rather than as a moment to chase speculative promises. Follow the official channels, insist on written confirmations, and prioritize security and clear records. If you do that, you will protect yourself whether the window leads to immediate conversions or starts a longer phase program of currency normalization. I will keep monitoring official updates and procedural notices. If you found this report helpful, subscribe for concise, calm updates and practical checklists so you can make informed decisions instead of rushed ones. Thank you for watching and for staying grounded during a moment that matters to many holders.